Welcome to the Bare Metal Cyber Security Plus podcast. This series helps you prepare for the CompTIA Security Plus exam with focused explanations and practical context. For a companion study guide, check out the Achieve CompTIA Security Plus 701 Exam Success by Dr. Jason Edwards. It is the most concise and complete Security Plus guide on the market, built for busy professionals who want to pass the exam fast and on their first try. You can find this book and others at cyberauthor.me. Reaching episode 200 of this series is a reminder of how much ground we've covered and how critical compliance continues to be in every area of cybersecurity. As we close out this milestone episode, we're turning our focus to a topic that plays a major role in both organizational success and exam readiness: external audits and assessment. These activities verify that your internal controls meet required standards, not just because you say they do, but because a qualified third party confirms it. In this episode, we explore two important categories: regulatory audits and independent assessments. We'll also look at how to prepare effectively and use these evaluations as tools for growth, not just obligation. Let's start with regulatory audits. These are formal evaluations performed by government agencies or regulatory authorities to determine whether an organization complies with specific laws, rules, or standards. Regulatory audits are not optional. If you operate in a regulated industry such as healthcare, finance, education, energy, or government contracting, regulatory audits are a regular part of doing business. A regulatory audit might focus on financial reporting, data protection, access control, breach response, or a combination of these. The scope is determined by the regulations that apply to your industry. In the United States, for example, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act governs healthcare privacy and security, while the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act applies to financial institutions. In the European Union, the General Data Protection Regulation mandates strict rules on how personal data is collected, used, and secured. Regulatory audits can be scheduled or they can be triggered by an event, such as a breach, complaint, or failure to submit required documentation. During an audit, regulators may interview employees, review system logs, examine incident records, inspect vendor contracts, and evaluate whether required policies are in place and being followed. A successful regulatory audit starts long before the auditors arrive. Organizations that stay audit-ready throughout the year fare far better than those that scramble at the last minute. That means maintaining accurate documentation, conducting internal audits, logging decisions, and staying current with policy reviews. It also means ensuring that your employees understand their roles during an audit and that there's a clear point of contact for responding to auditor requests. Let's walk through a real-world scenario. A regional hospital in the United States receives notice that the Department of Health and Human Services will be conducting a Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act compliance audit. Because the hospital has a mature compliance program, it already has an inventory of protected health information, a log of user access to patient data, and a schedule of training completions. It also has incident response plans and risk assessments updated within the last 6 months. The audit team is able to answer questions quickly, produce relevant documentation, and show that known risks are being addressed. As a result, the hospital passes the audit with only minor recommendations. No fines, no corrective action plans. The key to success was preparation and the ability to demonstrate that compliance wasn't just a policy, it was a daily practice. When preparing for regulatory audits, organizations should create audit readiness kits that include policies, logs, training records, system inventories, vendor contracts, and risk assessments. These materials should be indexed, stored securely, and reviewed regularly. A designated audit coordinator should oversee this material and serve as the liaison between the organization and the regulator. Another best practice is conducting mock audits or readiness reviews using internal teams or external consultants. These practice audits simulate the questions, document requests, and interview process that regulators are likely to follow. They help uncover weak spots in documentation, identify gaps in awareness, and improve overall response time. By identifying problems early, mock audits turn regulatory audits into manageable and often positive experiences. Now let's shift to the second major area of focus: examinations and independent assessments. While regulatory audits are conducted by government entities, independent assessments are conducted by third-party organizations such as auditors, certification bodies, or cybersecurity firms. These assessments are typically voluntary, but they carry significant value for reputation, certification, and customer confidence. A common example is a System and Organization Control 2 report, often used to assess cloud service providers and technology firms. These reports evaluate how well an organization protects customer data, monitors operations, and enforces controls. Another example is the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard Assessment, which is required for merchants and service providers that handle credit card data. Others include certifications like International Organization for Standardization 2701, FedRAMP, or assessments based on NIST frameworks. The purpose of these independent assessments is twofold. First, they verify that your organization's controls meet a defined standard. Second, they produce a formal report or certificate that can be shared with customers, vendors, regulators, or partners to prove that your systems are trustworthy and well managed. Let's consider another example. A software-as-a-service provider that offers tools to financial firms undergoes a System and Organization Control 2 Type 2 audit each year. This includes a detailed review of their access control policies, incident response processes, backup systems, encryption methods, and vendor management practices. The auditors observe the organization over several months, review logs, and evaluate consistency in control execution. At the end of the process, the provider receives a clean report, which it uses to build trust with customers and shorten sales cycles. Customers often request this report as part of their own vendor due diligence, and without it, the provider would lose business opportunities. These independent assessments can also serve as a strategic differentiator. In competitive industries, organizations that can demonstrate third-party validation of their security practices are more likely to win contracts and retain customers. Assessments also help mature the organization internally by identifying control gaps and driving investment in people, process, and technology. However, assessments must be well managed to be effective. That means setting the scope carefully, selecting qualified assessors, ensuring that evidence is complete, and preparing staff for interviews or observation. It also means using the results not just to earn a certification, but to improve. A failed or incomplete assessment can still be valuable if the findings are addressed. In many cases, certification bodies allow organizations to resolve gaps within a defined remediation window. Organizations that embrace this opportunity for improvement tend to build more resilient and compliant systems in the long term. For both regulatory audits and independent assessments, the key is preparedness. Organizations that view these events as opportunities, not as threats, are more likely to succeed. That means keeping documentation up to date, aligning internal controls with external standards, and maintaining a culture of compliance that runs from the top of the organization to the frontline teams. From a Security Plus exam perspective, you may see questions that describe an audit or assessment scenario and ask how to prepare, what documentation to provide, or how results should be used. You may also be asked to distinguish between different types of audits or identify which ones apply to certain frameworks. Here's a tip to keep in mind. If the scenario involves government oversight or legal enforcement, it's a regulatory audit. If it describes third-party review, certification, or a customer-facing report, it's an independent assessment. If preparation involves policies, logs, and risk assessments, that's your audit kit. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Bare Metal Cybersecurity Plus podcast. For more episodes, tools, and study support, visit us at baremetalcyber.com. And before you take the test, make sure to check out the practice questions in the book Achieve CompTIA Security Plus SY0-701 Exam Success by Dr. Jason Edwards. They cover every domain and are a powerful way to lock in your knowledge.